Get comfortable. Pull the blanket up, let your shoulders sink, and let me tell you the oldest bedtime stories our civilization owns, the Greek myths. And I do mean bedtime stories. 3,000 years ago, on nights exactly like this one, Greek children fell asleep to these same tales. Zeus and his thunderbolt, Medusa and her snakes, the man who flew too close to the sun. Tonight, we're going to travel the whole mythology, from the birth of the universe to the gates of sleep itself. And along the way, we'll even solve a real historical mystery, the truth behind Atlantis. So, in the beginning, there was chaos. Not chaos like your kitchen on a Monday morning, chaos with a capital C, the yawning void, the gap before existence, the cosmic waiting room where nothing had happened yet, ever. The Greeks didn't bother explaining where chaos came from, which is honestly refreshing. Even their deepest thinkers basically shrugged and moved on to the good part. And the good part came quickly. Out of chaos emerged the first beings. Not born, not made, they simply arrived. Gaia, the earth herself. Not a goddess who rules the earth, but the actual ground under everything, alive and aware. Tartarus, the abyss beneath the earth, a pit so deep that a bronze anvil dropped from the world would fall 9 days before reaching its bottom. Nyx, the night, whom even Zeus would one day fear to offend. Remember her? She matters tonight. And Eros, desire, the pull that draws things together. Because without that, the Greeks reasoned nothing else would ever bother to happen. Then Gaia, all by herself, brought forth Uranos, the sky, and draped him over the world as her equal and her husband. And here, in the very first family of existence, the Greek myths established their single most important theme, the one that will run through every story we tell tonight. Family is complicated. Confused ancient Greek asking his philosopher friend, casual. So, before everything, there was nothing?
Not nothing. Chaos. A yawning gap.
More confused? A gap in what? There's nothing for it to be a gap in.
Look, that was a very long time ago.
Because Gaia and Uranus had children, the 12 Titans, magnificent and enormous, and then more children, the one-eyed Cyclops and the 100-handers, creatures with 50 heads and 100 arms. And Uranus, the sky, father of all of them, looked at his stranger children and was disgusted. So he shoved them back into the earth, back into Gaia. And Gaia, mother of everything, groaned under the weight and made a decision that would echo through eternity. She forged a sickle of gray adamant, gathered her Titan sons, and asked which of them had the courage to overthrow their own father. 11 Titans stared at the floor of the world in silence. Only the youngest stepped forward, clever, ambitious, hungry-eyed Kronos. What happens next is the most famous act of family violence in all mythology. And the polite version is Kronos ambushed his father with a sickle, wounded him beyond repair, and cast the pieces into the sea. And where the sea foamed, something impossibly beautiful would later rise. But that's a story for another chapter. The sky retreated to the heavens, separated from the earth forever, which the Greeks said is why sky and earth no longer touch. And Kronos, the son with the sickle, took the throne of the universe. His parents' curse followed him up the steps. One day, your child will do to you what you did to your father. Kronos laughed it off. He shouldn't have, because in Greek mythology, prophecies are like taxes. You can dodge them for a while, but they always collect. So Kronos rules the universe. The golden age begins, and for a while, everything is wonderful. If you don't look in the nursery. Because that prophecy, your child will overthrow you, sat in Kronos' mind like a stone in a sandal. And Kronos, who had personally learned that children are a workplace hazard, developed a solution of breathtaking simplicity. Every time his wife Rhea gave birth, Kronos would take the newborn, admire it briefly, and swallow it whole. Not chew, this matters legally and biologically, swallow. Down went Hestia, down went Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. 5 gods sitting in their father's stomach. And since gods cannot die, they sat there fully conscious, growing up in the world's worst waiting room, presumably composing very pointed remarks for eventual use.
Do not mind me, sleepwalking straight to the one thing that matters, right down there.
Rhea, meanwhile, went from grieving to furious to strategic, the exact evolutionary path of every wronged mother in mythology. Pregnant with her 6th child, she went to her own mother, Gaia, who by now had opinions about husbands who mistreat children, and together they arranged the most consequential babysitting operation in history. Rhea gave birth in secret in a cave on the island of Crete to a boy named Zeus. She left him there to be raised by nymphs, guarded by warriors who clashed their shields whenever the baby cried so his father wouldn't hear, the first recorded use of white noise for infant care. Then she wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes, carried it to Kronos, and handed it over with a straight face. And Kronos, ruler of the cosmos, devourer of gods, paranoid king of everything, swallowed a rock. Didn't notice, didn't chew, remember, complimented the texture, according to absolutely no ancient source, but come on, we all know he did. Years passed. Zeus grew up wild and strong on Crete, on goat's milk and honey, and when he was ready, Gaia and Rhea revealed his heritage and his mission. With a potion slipped into Kronos' drink, mythology is vague about how. I choose to believe Rhea just said, "Try this, it's imported." Kronos suddenly became violently, cosmically ill, and up came, in reverse order, everything he'd ever swallowed. First the stone, then Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, fully grown now, extremely well rested, and in the mood for a conversation with their father.
This baby feels heavier than the last 5.
He's, big boned. Runs in the family, dear.
Crunchy. They're usually not crunchy.
New recipe. Sleep well, my love.
What followed was the Titanomachy, 10 years of war between the young gods and the Titans, a battle so vast it shook the roots of the world. Zeus freed the Cyclopes from Tartarus, and in gratitude, they forged him the weapon that would define him forever, the Thunderbolt. They armed his brothers, too. A trident that could split the sea for Poseidon, and for Hades, a helmet of darkness that made its wearer invisible. Even with divine artillery, the war ground on until Zeus recruited the 100-handers, the very monsters Eurytus had buried, who could throw 300 boulders at once, which is less a battle tactic and more a weather system. The Titans fell. Kronos was cast down into Tartarus, sealed behind bronze gates, guarded by the same 100-handed brothers his father had once imprisoned. The circle closed. And the stone Kronos had swallowed, Zeus set it up at Delphi, where the Greeks would point at it for 1,000 years. The actual rock, tourists were assured, that saved the universe. And somewhere in the new palace on Mount Olympus, a young king with a thunderbolt settled onto his throne and thought the dangerous thought every ruler in this story eventually thinks. It will be different from me. With the Titans locked away, the 3 brothers divided the universe the way brothers divide anything, with barely disguised resentment. They drew lots. Zeus drew the sky and became king, Poseidon drew the sea, and Hades drew the underworld, which is exactly the price it sounds like. And he took it with the grim dignity of a man who suspects the raffle was rigged. The earth itself they left as common ground, which every family therapist could have told them was a mistake. And on the peak of Mount Olympus, above the clouds, the winning team built its palace and formed the most famous, most dysfunctional family in the history of storytelling, the 12 Olympians. Let me introduce you around the table because you'll need to know them all night. At the head, Zeus, king of gods, lord of the sky and thunder. Mighty, majestic, and possessed of exactly one weakness, which is that he cannot, will not, and constitutionally shall not stay faithful to his wife, a personality flaw responsible for roughly 60% of all Greek mythology. Beside him, Hera, queen of the gods, goddess of marriage, which the Greeks fully understood was ironic. Brilliant, regal, and armed with a vengeance so patient and so creative that, honestly, most of her victims had it coming. Note the pattern, though. Her wrath almost always landed not on Zeus, but on the people Zeus dragged into his nonsense, which tells you plenty about power on Olympus. Poseidon, you've met. Sea, earthquakes, horses, and a temper with the approximate stability of all three. Demeter, goddess of the harvest, quietly the most powerful person in the room, since she decides whether anybody eats. Hold on to that thought for 2 chapters. Athena, born, and this is her actual origin story, fully grown and fully armored out of Zeus's skull after he swallowed her pregnant mother and developed history's worst headache. Goddess of wisdom and strategy, Zeus's favorite, the one who fights with her brain. Explain again why you got the sky and I got the fish.
We drew lots, brother. It was completely fair.
You held the lots in your hat.
It was a very fair hat.
Her opposite, Ares, god of war in its ugliest form. Rage, bloodlust, running away when wounded. A god even his own parents openly disliked. Apollo, god of light, music, prophecy, and plague, the golden boy, and his twin sister Artemis, goddess of the hunt and the moon, who asked her father at age 3 for eternal independence and got it, the only Olympian with a clean conflict of interest record. Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, born from that sea foam we mentioned in chapter 1, a being so beautiful that Zeus married her off immediately to prevent civil war, and married her, in the cosmos' best joke, to Hephaestus, god of the forge, master craftsman, maker of everything wonderful on Olympus, and the only ugly god, thrown off the mountain as a baby by a parent embarrassed at his lameness, and who returned by pure skill to become indispensable. The nicest person in this family, obviously. Hermes, the messenger. Winged sandals, quicksilver mind, patron of travelers, merchants, and thieves. Inventor of the lyre before he was 1 day old. The only god with universal access. Olympus, Earth, and the underworld. And Hestia, goddess of the hearth. The gentle eldest sister who eventually gave up her Olympic seat to Dionysus, god of wine, because she preferred tending the fire to attending the drama, thereby becoming the only member of this family to voluntarily retire, and unquestionably the wisest. 12 gods, 1 mountain, infinite pettiness. The Greeks looked up at their heaven and saw their own family with the volume turned up to cosmic. And that was the genius of it. Their gods weren't distant perfection. They were us, immortal and unsupervised. Which brings us to what happens when this family notices the little creatures crawling around down on the shared property. Because somebody up there is about to look at humanity and commit the first crime of compassion. Now, about those little creatures on the shared property, humans existed. The myths disagree politely about how. In the most popular version, we were actually sculpted from clay by a titan named Prometheus, whose name means forethought, the one titan clever enough to have sided with Zeus in the war. Prometheus made us, and like every craftsman, he liked his work. The gods, on the whole, did not. To Olympus, early humanity was a shivering, squeaking disappointment, hairless, clawless, fireless, dying of winter and eating everything raw. Zeus's official policy was benign neglect, with an emphasis shifting steadily toward the neglect. And at a famous negotiation at Mecone, where gods and mortals met to settle who owed what to whom, Prometheus pulled his first trick. He butchered an ox and made 2 piles. One, the good meat hidden inside an ugly stomach. The other, bare bones wrapped in glistening, gorgeous fat. "Choose your portion, Lord Zeus," he said, "and whatever you pick shall be the god's share forever." Zeus picked the shiny one. Bones. Forever. It's why the Greeks got to keep the meat at every sacrifice and burn the bones for the gods. An eternal little scam baked into their religion, and they loved it. Zeus, less amused, retaliated where it hurt. Fine, let them keep their meat and eat it raw. He took fire from mankind. No hearth, no forge, no light after sunset. Humanity huddled in the dark. And Prometheus watched his clay children shiver and made the decision he was named for, knowing exactly what it would cost. He walked into Olympus as a guest, hollowed out a giant fennel stalk, and smuggled a glowing ember of divine fire out inside it. The most consequential act of shoplifting in the history of existence. He handed fire to humanity, and from that single ember came everything. The hearth, the forge, pottery, metal, cities, civilization. Every candle, every rocket, every phone screen glowing at midnight is downstream of one titan and one hollow plant stem. Zeus's response came in two parts, and they tell you everything about how the Greeks understood the world. For Prometheus, eternity chained to a mountain in the Caucasus where an eagle arrives daily to eat his liver, which, since he's immortal, regenerates every night.
Okay, but why would they give me a jar I'm not allowed to open?
Dearest, the gods were very specific.
One peek. Statistically, what's the worst that fits in a jar?
All of it. All of it fits.
A punishment engineered like clockwork. Renewable pain for a renewable gift. He would hang there for ages, unrepentant. Mythology's first martyr for progress. The patron saint of everyone who ever got in trouble for helping. And for humanity, Zeus prepared something far more elegant. A present. He commissioned the gods to build the first woman. Hephaestus sculpted her, Athena dressed her, Aphrodite gave her grace, Hermes gave her, and I'm quoting the mythology spirit here, a talent for curiosity and delightful trouble. They named her Pandora, all gifted, and sent her as a bride to Prometheus's sweet, dim brother Epimetheus, afterthought, who had been warned by Prometheus never to accept a gift from Zeus, and who took one look at Pandora and forgot every word. She came with luggage, one sealed jar. Yes, jar, the famous box is a translation error 20 centuries old, with a simple instruction. Never open it. You know what happens. Everybody has always known what happens. That's the point of the story. Pandora lifted the lid. Curiosity, the very gift the gods installed. They built the leak into the vessel. And out flew everything. Sickness, sorrow, old age, envy, toil, all the miseries of the world, buzzing out like black moths into the evening air. Too fast to catch, impossible to put back. She slammed the lid in horror and trapped the very last thing inside. The one thing that hadn't escaped. Hope. And for 3,000 years, people have argued about what that means. Is hope the one comfort we kept, safe in the jar, always with us? Or is hope just the final trick, the thing that keeps us going so the other miseries never run out of material? The myth refuses to say. It just leaves the jar on humanity's table, lid closed, hope inside, and lets every generation shake it and wonder. Personally, and this is just your narrator's opinion, at low volume, at bedtime, I think the Greeks knew exactly what they were doing. Hope stayed because we get to decide what it is. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. Fire upstairs, hope in the jar, and an eagle on a mountain marking the price of both. Now let's go downstairs, and let me rehabilitate mythology's most misunderstood god while we're at it. Hades. Say the name and you picture a villain. Flaming hair, evil laugh, scheming against Olympus. That's the movies. The actual Greek Hades was something much stranger. The responsible one. He drew the worst lot in the family raffle, moved into the basement of existence, and then, unlike literally every other Olympian, simply did his job. For eternity. No coups, no scandals, almost no drama. The Greeks feared him so much they wouldn't even say his name, calling him the wealthy one instead, because all the gold and silver in the ground was technically his, making the god of death, on paper, the richest being in existence. His kingdom wasn't hell either. It was everyone's destination, sorted by afterlife. Heroes to the bright Elysian fields, ordinary souls to the gray meadows of Asphodel, and the truly terrible to Tartarus, where the special customers got custom punishments. We'll meet one later tonight. At the border flowed the river Styx, ferried by grim old Charon, who charged 1 coin per soul, which is why Greeks buried their dead with a coin. And the gate was guarded by Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, who was, and I need you to know this, a very good boy from all 3 perspectives simultaneously. Just one thing was missing in the kingdom of the dead: life.
And here begins the love story that explains your calendar. Above ground lived Persephone,
daughter of Demeter, the harvest goddess, she who decides if anyone eats. Persephone was springtime made flesh, and Hades, on a rare trip upstairs, saw her in a meadow and fell. The myths say instantly, the way lonely people fall. What happened next depends on which ancient source you read, and none of them look great for Hades. The ground split open, the dark chariot surged out, and Persephone was carried down into the underworld, while her mother heard only the echo of a cry and found only scattered flowers.
I redecorated. The skulls are fewer. There's a garden now.
It's one pomegranate tree, Hades.
It's a very healthy tree.
The lighting is better too. Don't let it go to your head.
What followed was the first hostage negotiation in mythology, and Demeter played it with terrifying brilliance. She didn't storm the underworld. She didn't beg Zeus. She simply stopped. Stopped the harvest. Stopped every growing thing on Earth. The fields died, the famine spread, and the smoke of sacrifices to Olympus grew thin. Because starving humans can't spare an ox for the gods, Demeter had found the one lever that moves heaven. She made the gods' own dinner disappear. Zeus folded fast. Hermes was dispatched to the underworld with the order, give her back. And Hades, and this detail is everything, obeyed. But quietly, before she left, he offered Persephone a pomegranate, and she ate 6 seeds. Whether she was tricked or hungry, or as the older stranger readings whisper, whether she chose it, knowing exactly what it meant, the myths leave deliciously unclear, because the rule was ancient and absolute. Eat the food of the dead and you belong, in part, to the dead. The compromise was arithmetic. 6 seeds, 6 months. Half the year, Persephone reigns above with her mother, and the world blooms. Spring, summer, Demeter's joy. Half the year, she descends to rule below, and Demeter grieves, and the world goes cold and bare. Autumn, winter, the harvest goddess's heartbreak written across every leafless tree. That's the myth doing what myths do best, taking the biggest question a farming civilization has. Why does the world die every year? And answering it with a family story. And notice who Persephone became. Not a victim, a queen. The Greek texts show her ruling the underworld with real authority. Later heroes who visit don't plead with Hades, they plead with her. 6 months a goddess of flowers, 6 months the Iron Queen of the dead, commuting between them for eternity. The Greeks had a goddess for spring and a goddess for death, and in the year's finest piece of poetry, they made her the same person. Sleep on that one. She does, 6 months at a time. Everyone knows Medusa. Snake hair, stone gaze, monster, sword, the end. But the version the later ancient poets told, the one that made her immortal in a way no monster ever earns, is a tragedy wearing a horror mask. So let me tell it properly, gently, the way it deserves. Medusa wasn't born a monster, not in this telling. She was born mortal and beautiful. One of 3 sisters, and she served as a priestess in the temple of Athena, a position that required a vow. No romance, ever. Her life belonged to the goddess. And then Poseidon, the sea god, Zeus's brother, an Olympian with an Olympian's entitlement, noticed her. In the version told by the Roman poet Ovid, what happened next happened in Athena's own temple, and Medusa was not asked. And here, the story turns its cruelest corner, the one that made ancient audiences shift uncomfortably too. Athena's rage fell not on Poseidon, gods don't punish gods, but on the girl. The shining hair became serpents. The face men praised became a face no one could look upon and live. Every telling since antiquity has argued about that moment. Punishment, said some, but others, ancient and modern, noticed something else. After the change, no man could ever touch Medusa again. Some read the curse as the closest thing to armor a goddess was permitted to give. The myth holds both readings at once, uncomfortable and unresolved, which is exactly why we're still telling it. Medusa withdrew to a remote island at the edge of the world, and around her grew a garden the ancient descriptions rendered genuinely eerie. Statues, dozens of them, soldiers mid-charge, heroes mid-lunge,
every man who came to collect her head standing exactly where he'd made his last mistake. She never hunted anyone, notice. They always came to her. Enter Perseus. And to his credit, the myth gives Medusa's ending to its most decent hero.
Okay, eyes closed. Totally safe. She can't. Are the snakes looking at me?
The snakes don't petrify anyone. They just judge you.
That's honestly worse?
Done with heroes. Third one this month. I don't even decorate anymore.
Perseus wasn't a glory hound. He was a kid trapped by a wicked king's demand. Bring me the head of Medusa, the polite version of go die. The gods, who wanted the job done, equipped him like a divine heist team. Winged sandals from Hermes, Hades' own helmet of invisibility, an unbreakable sickle sword, a special satchel, and from Athena, the tool that made the impossible merely deadly, a shield polished to a perfect mirror. You know the scene. It's one of the oldest suspense sequences in world literature. The dark garden, the frozen statues, the young man moving backwards, watching only the reflection in the bronze, the world's first rear-view mirror, guided, some versions say, by Athena's own steadying hand on his arm. Medusa, asleep among her serpents? One stroke. And even then, the myth won't let it be simple, because from Medusa's severed neck sprang her children by Poseidon, held inside her all this time. The winged horse Pegasus, white as sea foam, leaping straight into the sky. Beauty escaping from tragedy at last. And the golden warrior Chrysaor. Perseus flew home on the winged sandals, and Medusa's story ended. Except it absolutely didn't. Her head kept its power, and Perseus used it like a divine appliance, petrifying a sea monster to save the Princess Andromeda, turning a treacherous king to stone, until finally he gave the head to Athena, who set it in the center of her shield, the Aegis.
Sit with that ending a second. The goddess who transformed her wore her face into every battle for the rest of eternity. Trophy? Apology? Warning to the gods themselves? 3,000 years and we're still not sure. And the face itself, the Gorgoneon, became ancient Greece's most popular protective symbol. Painted on shields, carved over doorways, stamped on the armor of Alexander the Great, hung over bakery ovens. The monster who was made, not born, became the guardian of ordinary front doors, the face you put up to keep harm away. The Greeks, whatever else you say about them, understood that the best guardian against monsters is someone who knows exactly how monsters are made.
Now, for mythology's greatest action hero and the 12 worst items ever written on a to-do list, Heracles, Hercules is his Roman name, was Zeus's son by a mortal woman, which meant Hera hated him from before he was born. She sent 2 serpents into his crib, and the baby strangled them both, and reportedly found the whole thing delightful. That was the pattern of his life. Unlimited strength, unlimited heart, and a target on his back drawn by the Queen of Heaven herself. The 12 labors began in tragedy. Hera struck him with madness, and when it cleared, the damage to his own family was beyond repair. Broken with grief, he asked the oracle at Delphi how to atone, and the answer was bitter. Serve your cousin Eurystheus, a small, cowardly king who owed his throne to one of Hera's schemes, and do whatever he commands. 10 labors, later inflated to 12 on technicalities, because of course the one thing Eurystheus was good at was finding technicalities. Let's run the list. Tracker ready, because it escalates beautifully. 1. The Nemean lion. Hide immune to weapons. Heracles' solution was to put down the useless sword and wrestle it barehanded, then wear the invulnerable pelt forever after as history's most intimidating jacket. 2. The Hydra, the swamp serpent that grew 2 heads for every one cut off. The myth that gave every language its word for problems that multiply when attacked. Solution? Fire. Cauterizing each neck, plus a nephew with a torch. Mythology's first acknowledgement that even demigods need an assistant. 3. The Golden Hind, a deer sacred to Artemis, to be captured without harm. A labor of patience, a full year of pursuit, because Eurystheus had realized brute force wasn't the weakness. 4, the Erymanthian boar, alive, which ended with Heracles cheerfully dumping a monster boar at court and Eurystheus hiding in a giant bronze storage jar, a piece of physical comedy the Greek vase painters adored so much they painted it over and over. The great king in a pot forever.
Heracles! Booming, cheerful jock energy! King Eurystheus! I brought the giant 3-headed dog you asked for!
Why would you actually bring it?
It was on the list. You wrote the list.
From the jar, squeaking. Take it back! Take it back right now!
5, and my personal favorite, the Augean stables. 3,000 divine cattle, 30 years, 0 cleanings. The job wasn't dangerous, it was degrading, designed purely to humiliate a hero. Heracles looked at the shovel, looked at the stables, and rerouted 2 rivers through the building, finishing in an afternoon. The single greatest work smarter, not harder moment in world mythology, and every engineer's founding legend. 6 through 9, rapid fire. Man-eating birds with bronze feathers, dispersed with a divine rattle. The Cretan bull wrestled home. The man-eating mares of Diomedes fed their own owner. Mythic justice is direct. And the war belt of the Amazon queen Hippolyta. A labor that only turned into a battle because Hera, disguised in the crowd, spread a rumor at exactly the wrong moment. Her fingerprints, as always, on the worst of it. 10. The cattle of Geryon, a 3-bodied giant at the world's western edge. To get there, Heracles split a mountain in half and let the ocean pour between. The Greeks pointed at the Strait of Gibraltar and called its cliffs the Pillars of Heracles. And they'll matter again tonight because just beyond those pillars is where a certain philosopher will one day park Atlantis. 11. The golden apples of the Hesperides, which required holding up the scow for a while, trading burdens with the Titan Atlas, then talking the cosmically slow Atlas into taking the sky back, the only labor won by pure negotiation. And 12. The finale Eurystheus was sure was a death sentence. Descend alive into the underworld and bring back Cerberus. Heracles did it the way you're supposed to do impossible things. Politely. He went to Hades and Persephone and simply asked. And the king and queen of the dead, perhaps amused, perhaps impressed that someone finally knocked, said yes on one condition. No weapons, bare hands, don't hurt the dog. Heracles wrestled Cerberus gently into submission, carried all 3 heads upstairs, showed the king, jar again instantly, and then, deal honored, walked the good boy home. 12 labors, 12 impossibilities, beaten by strength exactly 4 times, and by patience, cleverness, humility, and asking nicely the rest. That's the real syllabus hiding inside Mythology's action movie. When Heracles finally died, betrayed, poisoned, agonizing, a story for a darker night, Zeus brought him up to Olympus, made him fully divine, and in the myth's last quiet joke, married him to Hebe, the goddess of youth, eternal retirement, eternally young for the man who did every job on the list. Even Hera let it happen. After everything, even Hera. Every technology has a first crash report, and this is aviation's, filed 3,000 years early in wax and feathers by the greatest engineer who ever lived in a story. Daedalus was mythology's genius, sculptor, architect, inventor, the man other myths call when something impossible needs building. His masterpiece was also his prison sentence. On Crete, King Minos had a problem of the family variety, a monstrous son, bull-headed and man-bodied, the Minotaur, and he needed somewhere to put him that wasn't a nursery or a newspaper headline. Daedalus designed the labyrinth, a maze so perfect, so recursively deceitful that even its own architect, the story insists, barely found his way out after construction. Corridors that curved back on themselves, forks that led to forks, darkness engineered like a machine, the ancient world's first infinite loop. Every 9 years, Athens was forced to send young men and women into it as tribute, the Minotaur's dinner, until the hero Theseus arrived and Minos' own daughter Ariadne fell for him, and someone leaked the exploit. A simple ball of thread unspooled from the entrance. Follow the string back out. The most sophisticated structure in the ancient world defeated by its first documentation leak. And Who had told Ariadne the trick? Daedalus, of course, the engineer siding with the users against the client. Minos, upon discovering the breach, responded like every furious management in history. He locked the engineer in a tower with his young son Icarus for company, so the labyrinth's secrets would die with them. But, and the myth tellers loved this line, Minos could lock the land and lock the sea. He could not lock the sky. Daedalus watched the seabirds wheel past his window and began to collect their feathers. Feathers, thread, and candle wax, layered in curves, largest to smallest, exactly the way real wings taper. The myth is oddly, wonderfully specific about the engineering. 2 pairs, and then the safety briefing every parent gives and no teenager hears, fly the middle path.
Icarus, repeat the flight plan back to me.
Not too low, not too high, blah blah. Middle altitude, boring.
The wax melts, son. This is a wax-based system.
Dad! I'm gonna touch the sun a little bit.
Too low, and the sea spray soaks the feathers and drags you down. Too high, and the sun softens the wax. Follow me, stay level, and we'll be free by nightfall. They jumped. And for a while, the myth insists we sit in this part, so we will. It worked! A father and son flying. Fishermen dropped their rods. Plowmen froze mid-furrow. People looked up and, the poets say, took them for gods. And were half right, because for one long morning over the bright Aegean, 2 humans owned the sky. And Icarus, 15, unstoppable, wearing the first wings in history, did what 15 does. A little higher. The air felt cooler, wilder, emptier. Higher. His father's voice thinned below him. Higher, toward that magnificent burning ceiling, until the smell of warm wax reached him, and the first feather spiraled loose, and then the wings simply came apart in his hands. Gently, the way built things fail. Not all at once, but one honest joint at a time. He fell past his father, calling his name, into the sea that carries his name still, the Icarian Sea, east of an island called Icaria. The Greeks pinned the story to their actual map, where it remains. Daedalus flew on alone, the worst flight in mythology, buried his boy on the island, and hung up his wings in a temple of Apollo, done with the sky forever. Now, everyone knows the moral. Don't fly too close to the sun. Every graduation speech has borrowed it. But hold on, because the myth said both things, and we keep quoting only one. Too high melts the wax. Too low soaks the wings. The sea kills you as surely as the sun. Daedalus's actual instruction wasn't stay humble. It was fly the middle course. Ambition trimmed with judgment, neither hiding at the waves nor grabbing at the sun. The Greeks even had a word for the sun-grabbing part, hubris. And tonight's whole mythology has secretly been a hubris seminar. Uranus, Kronos, the heroes, the kings. And one more thing, quietly, for the engineers listening with their eyes closed. The wings worked. The design was flawless. Daedalus landed safely. The failure wasn't the technology, it was the 15-year-old operating it outside spec. 3,000 years later, we'd have called it pilot error and grounded the fleet. Instead, the Greeks did something better. They told the crash report as a bedtime story, so every child in every generation would preload the lesson before ever touching wax or wings or anything with an altitude setting. That's what myths are for. They're the manual, installed early, in the only format a human will actually keep. A story about a boy who flew. Everything that goes wrong in the most famous war in history begins at a wedding, with a party planning decision. The gods are celebrating a marriage, and someone made the perfectly reasonable call not to invite Eris, the goddess of discord. Because who wants discord at a wedding? Eris came anyway, uninvited, and executed the greatest passive-aggressive move in mythology. She rolled a single golden apple into the banquet hall, inscribed with 2 words, "For the fairest," and left. That's it. That's all she did. 3 goddesses reached for it at once. Hera, queen of heaven, Athena, goddess of wisdom, Aphrodite, goddess of love.
And Zeus, king of gods, wielder of thunder, looked at the situation. His wife, his favorite daughter, and the goddess of love, all demanding he pick the most beautiful, and performed the wisest act of his entire mythology. He delegated. The judge would be a mortal. Paris, a prince of Troy, at that moment working as a shepherd, famous for being fair-minded and, more relevantly, exceptionally handsome and not terribly deep. The goddesses, to their eternal discredit, immediately tried bribery. And the bribes are a personality test the whole ancient world memorized. Hera offered power, rule over all the kingdoms of the earth. Athena offered glory, wisdom, and victory in every battle. Aphrodite offered the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris, 20 years old and a shepherd, did not hesitate. Aphrodite got the apple. 2 problems. The most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, was already married to Menelaus, king of Sparta. And Hera and Athena do not lose gracefully. From that afternoon, Troy's fate was co-signed by 2 vengeful goddesses. Paris visited Sparta as a guest, violated every sacred law of hospitality, and left with Helen. The myths argue to this day about whether she ran or was taken, and Homer, wisely, lets her be complicated.
The Greeks are gone! And they left us a giant wooden horse!
Laocoon, the priest. Flat. Dread. Burn it. Burn it right now on the beach.
What? No! It's a gift! Look at the craftsmanship!
The craftsmanship is breathing.
Menelaus called in the oaths. Every king of Greece had once sworn to defend Helen's marriage. 1,000 ships sailed, the face that launched 1,000 ships, as the later line goes, carrying every hero of the age. Agamemnon, the ambitious High King, Odysseus, who tried to dodge the draft by pretending to be insane, plowing his fields with salt, until they put his infant son in front of the plow. And he swerved. Clever men make terrible conscripts. And Achilles, the invincible teenager, hidden by his own mother disguised as a girl at a foreign court because she knew a prophecy. Go to Troy and you will be legend, and you will not come home. Odysseus found him too, laid out gifts of jewelry and dresses with one sword among them, sounded a false alarm, and watched which hand grabbed the blade. 10 years the war ground on beneath Troy's unbreakable walls, and Homer's Iliad, notice, spends its whole length on a few weeks near the end, because even Homer knew sieges are boring. What mattered was the people. Hector, Troy's crown prince, the one genuinely good man in the whole poem, defending a war he privately knows his brother's stupidity started. Achilles, sulking in his tent over a slight to his honor while Greeks die by the 100. And the duel between them, Hector versus Achilles, the good man versus the perfect weapon, which ends the only way it could and breaks every reader in 28 centuries. But walls don't fall to grief. They fall to Odysseus, who finally has the idea that ended the age of heroes. Build the horse. A colossal wooden offering left on the beach. The fleet sails away to hide behind an island. A lone Greek deserter stays to sell the story. The gods demand you take it inside. Troy's priest Laocoon warns them, "I fear Greeks, even bearing gifts," the line every language borrowed. And sea serpents drag him under mid-sentence, which the Trojans read as divine disapproval of him. The horse rolls in. The city celebrates itself to sleep. And at midnight, the trapdoor opens. The hidden soldiers drop. The gates swing wide, and the fleet, returned in the dark, pours in. Troy burns in a single night after 10 unbreakable years. Undone not by force, but by a story its victims wanted to believe. And here's tonight's twist to carry into your dreams. For centuries, educated people filed Troy itself under myth, a poet's invention like the gods. Then, in the 1870s, a stubborn German businessman named Heinrich Schliemann took Homer literally, dug where the poem pointed at a mound called Hisarlik in Turkey, and found it. City stacked on city, 9 Troys deep, one layer scorched by exactly the kind of fire the poem describes. The horse is a story. The gods are a story. But the walls are real! You can visit them! And somewhere under the poetry sits a real Bronze Age war that singers retold for centuries until it grew gods.
Keep that maneuver in mind. Myth wrapped around a real place, waiting for someone to take the map seriously, because we're about to do it one more time with the most famous lost place of all.
The war is over. Troy is ash. And now mythology asks its greatest question, the one the whole Odyssey exists to answer. How far is the distance between winning and getting home? For Odysseus, the man who thought up the horse, cleverest of all the Greeks, the answer is 10 more years. And the poem of those years is essentially a bedtime story anthology, one strange island at a time. So it's perfect for us. Let's sail it. First mistake, early. The island of the Cyclops. Odysseus and 12 men wander into a cave stocked with cheeses and lambs, an ancient walled convenience store. And instead of taking supplies and leaving, Odysseus insists on waiting to meet the owner because guest gifts are customary and he is fatally curious. The owner is Polyphemus, a one-eyed giant the size of a hillside who blocks the exit with a boulder 10 teams of oxen couldn't shift and starts... There's no gentle way through this part, so we'll take it at bedtime speed. Eating the crew, 2 per meal. Odysseus' escape is the cleverness Olympiad. He offers the giant strong, unwatered wine, introduces himself with a straight face as nobody, waits for the snoring, and drives a sharpened, fire-hardened olive stake into the single eye. And when Polyphemus howls for help and his neighbors shout through the boulder asking who's attacking him, the giant bellows the immortal line, "Nobody is attacking me!" And the neighbors, satisfied nothing is wrong, go home. The crew ride out at dawn, strapped onto the bellies of the sheep, the blind giant stroking each fleece as it passes. A perfect victory. And then Odysseus throws it away, because as they row clear, he cannot resist standing up in the boat and shouting his real name, full legal address included. Tell them Odysseus of Ithaca did this. And Polyphemus prays to his father. His father is Poseidon. The entire rest of the decade, every storm, every wreck, every year of exile flows from that one moment of hubris, megaphoned across the water. The clever man's one incurable flaw, needing the credit.
Who did this to me? Tell me your name! I told you. My name is Nobody.
Brothers! Nobody is attacking me! Why are you all leaving?
Row now. I want to shout my real name so badly.
What follows is the greatest hits of ancient imagination, and we'll drift through them. The bag of winds, gifted by the Wind King, every wind that could blow them off course, tied in a sack, opened by the crew within sight of Ithaca's fires, because they suspected treasure, blowing them the entire way back. Mythology's cruelest almost. Circe the sorceress, who turns half the crew into pigs, and whom Odysseus, forewarned by Hermes with a protective herb, outcharms instead of outfights. They stay a year. The sirens, whose song pulls sailors onto the rocks, the crew's ears sealed with beeswax, Odysseus lashed to the mast, ordered to ignore his own commands. The first recorded instance of a man designing a system to protect himself from himself. Economists cite it to this day. Scylla and Charybdis, 6-headed monster on one cliff, all-devouring whirlpool on the other. No third option. The original between a rock and a hard place. And Odysseus makes the commander's brutal arithmetic and hugs the monster's side, trading 6 men for the ship. Even a supervised visit to the land of the dead, where the ghost of Achilles, the glory-drenched hero who chose legend over long life, delivers the Odyssey's whole thesis in one line. Better to be a poor farmhand alive than king of all the dead. By the time Odysseus washes up on Ithaca, alone, every ship lost, every companion dead, 20 years after he left, the poem has one last movement, and it's the best one. His palace is infested. 108 suitors camped in his hall for years, eating his herds, courting his wife Penelope, plotting to murder his son. And Penelope, let's give her the spotlight she's owed, has been running a resistance of pure intelligence the entire time. She promised to choose a suitor when she finished weaving a burial shroud, wove it all day, and unpicked it every night for 3 years. The cleverest wife of the cleverest man, stalling 100 armed men with a loom. Odysseus enters his own home disguised as a beggar, clever to the last, is recognized only by his ancient dog Ares. Sorry? Argos, who waited 20 years, wags his tail once and dies? And if that line doesn't get you, the poem has one more. The contest of the bow. Penelope announces she'll marry whoever can string Odysseus's great bow and shoot through 12 axe heads. 108 strong men fail to even bend it. The shabby beggar in the corner asks for a turn, strings it like a musician tuning a lyre, sends the arrow through all 12, and the door of the hall swings shut. We'll close our eyes for the next part. The suitors had it coming, and Homer agrees. And then the reunion. And Penelope, brilliant to the end, tests him. Move our bed, she orders the servants, out of the bedroom. And Odysseus explodes. Impossible! He built that bed himself around a living olive tree, its roots still in the earth. It cannot be moved without cutting it down. Only he could know. The bed rooted in the living tree. 20 years, 10 a war and 10 a sea, and the marriage is still planted exactly where it grew. That's the Odyssey. Not a war story, the world's oldest story about just wanting to go home. And tonight, unlike Odysseus, you're already there. And now, the chapter I promised, the most famous lost place on Earth and a genuine historical detective story. Because unlike everything else tonight, Atlantis has a suspect, a crime scene, and physical evidence. First, the surprising truth about the source. Atlantis does not come from ancient folklore, whispered through generations. It comes from exactly one author, Plato, the philosopher, Athens, 4th century BC, in 2 dialogues written when he was an old man. No poet before him mentions it. No temple honored it. Homer, Hesiod, Herodotus, the encyclopedists of everything, never heard of it. One man, one source, full stop. And what a story he tells! 9,000 years before his time, beyond the pillars of Heracles, Gibraltar, remember Heracles split in the mountain, an island empire greater than Libya and Asia combined. Concentric rings of land and sea, walls plated in precious metals, a temple of silver and gold, hot and cold running springs, elephants, a navy that ruled the seas, a civilization at the summit of wealth and power, which then grew proud and grasping. The word is hubris. You've been in the seminar all night. Until, quote, in a single day and night of misfortune, earthquakes and floods swallowed it, and Atlantis sank beneath the sea. Now, the detail every treasure hunter skips. Why was Plato telling this? Context matters. The story appears in a philosophy lecture as a moral fable with a clear agenda. Virtuous, modest, proto-ideal Athens defeats rich, decadent, arrogant Atlantis. Then the gods audit everyone. It's an ethics seminar with special effects, and Plato invented instructive fictions constantly. It was his signature move. Case closed then? Fiction? Except, here's where the ice core instinct, take the old story seriously and check the ground, pays off again. Because something did sink, almost literally in Plato's backyard, and we found it. North of Crete sits a crescent-shaped island the ancients called Thera, today Santorini.
Master Plato, this island, 9,000 years ago, beyond the pillars, did it exist?
It exists where it is most useful, my boy, in the argument.
That's not a yes, Master.
It's not a no either. Write that down.
Its shape is a bite mark. The island is the rim of a drowned volcanic crater, and the sea inside that crescent is the flooded caldera. Around 3,500 years ago, roughly 900 years before Plato, not 9,000, hold that thought, Thera detonated in one of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history, vastly bigger than Krakatoa. And on that island, buried Pompeii style under ash, archaeologists in 1967 uncovered a city, Akrotiri, that stops the breath. 3-story houses, hot and cold plumbing, flushing toilets, magnificent wall paintings of ships and dolphins and saffron gatherers. of Bronze Age civilization of astonishing sophistication. The Minoans, Europe's first great civilization. The sea lords whose fleet ruled the Aegean, whose palace at Knossos on Crete was so vast and winding that many scholars think it is the memory behind the labyrinth of Minos from 3 chapters ago.
It's all connected. Told you the map matters. When Thera blew, the caldera collapsed into the sea and hurled tsunamis at Crete's north coast. The harbors, the fleet, the ports of the Sea Empire, and ashfall and chaos followed. Within a few generations, Minoan civilization weakened at the knees, fell to invaders from the mainland. A proud island phylacocracy at the height of its wealth, broken by earthquake and sea in, say it with me, something very like a single day and a night of misfortune. 900 years of retelling later, one civilization's catastrophe becoming the next one's legend, the exact process we watched build Ragnarok out of a volcano in the sun. A moral philosopher in Athens reaches for a cautionary tale about drowned arrogance. And many scholars suspect reworks a real memory, inflating 900 years to 9,000 and relocating it past Gibraltar for atmosphere, the way storytellers always move things far away and long ago. Is it proven? No, and honest history says so out loud. Plenty of scholars think Plato built it from whole cloth, borrowing bits of Thera, Helike, a Greek city that visibly sank in an earthquake in Plato's own lifetime, and Egyptian tales. But that's the beauty of this one. Every ingredient Plato needed really existed, within reach of his library. The mystery isn't whether a continent hides under the Atlantic. Sonar has seen the seafloor. It doesn't. The mystery is better. It's watching in real time across 24 centuries how a real wound becomes a story becomes a legend, and a legend becomes a place people are still looking for. Plato wanted Atlantis to teach a lesson about hubris. Instead, it taught a better one, that nothing we build is as durable as the stories we tell about what we built. The gold sinks. The story floats. It always floats. And so we come down from Olympus, up from the underworld, home from the sea, to the last god of the night, the one this whole channel secretly works for. The Greeks, who had a god for everything, of course had a god of sleep, Hypnos. And where mythology usually reaches for terror, for Hypnos it went tender. His mother is Nyx, night herself, from our very first chapter, the primordial power even Zeus feared. His twin brother is Thanatos, death. And the Greeks made them twins deliberately. Sleep and death, the two great lettings go side by side. One gentle and temporary, one gentle and not. Ancient artists carved them as 2 winged young men, often holding a sleeping figure between them. And you sometimes can't tell which twin is which. That was the point. Hypnos lived, the poet said, in a cave in a land of eternal dusk, where the sun never rose and never quite set. Through his cave flowed Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, murmuring over pebbles, the original white noise machine. At the cave mouth grew poppies and every sleep-bringing herb. No door, doors creak, no rooster, no goose, no watchdog permitted anywhere in the country. Just the murmur of the river, the dark red poppies, and in the middle of it all, on a bed of black ebony piled with soft, dark cushions, the god himself. Sleep, of course, on the job forever. It's the coziest real estate in all mythology, and I want you to picture checking in tonight. Around him drift his sons, the Onoroi, the dreams, 1,000 of them, and the Greeks, wonderful taxonomists of the invisible, gave the important ones names and job titles. Morpheus, the shaper, yes, that Morpheus, the name the movies borrowed, crafts the people in your dreams. Every face, every voice, every familiar stranger. One brother shapes the animals, another the landscapes and objects, a full production studio running nightly behind your eyes, staffed by the sons of sleep. And the Greeks made one more distinction, my favorite, straight from Homer and Virgil. Dreams leave the cave through 2 gates. Through the gate of ivory, past the false dreams, beautiful, deceiving, gone by morning. Through the gate of horn, past the true ones, the dreams that mean something, the ones you remember. 28 centuries later, we still can't tell you which gate tonight's dreams will use. Some technologies never improve. Was Hypnos powerful? Here's the receipt. In the Iliad, Hera needs Zeus distracted, and the only force she trusts to overpower the king of gods, Thunderbolt and all,
is Hypnos. He's terrified. He did it once before and barely escaped Zeus's rage. Only Night herself, his mother, saved him because Zeus feared to offend her. But Hera bribes him with marriage to one of the Graces, mythology's loveliest signing bonus, and Hypnos in the form of a songbird in a pine tree closes the eyes of Zeus himself. The moral, delivered by the oldest poem in the West: sleep conquers everything. Kings, heroes, gods, the Lord of Thunder personally. Everyone, every night, surrenders to the quiet twin. Which brings us, finally, to you. Because you've made quite a journey tonight. You watched the universe assemble itself out of a yawning gap. You met a family of immortals who invented every kind of trouble. You held fire and hope and a pomegranate with 6 seeds gone. You flew too high, sailed too far, and found the bed built around the living tree. You even solved Atlantis, or came as close as anyone honestly can. 3,000 years of stories, told by firelight, by lamplight, by nightlight, parent to child to you, and every single teller of every single one of them ended their evening exactly where you are now, eyes heavy, blanket up, surrendering to the songbird in the pine tree. The Greeks would say Hypnos has you now, that the poppies are near, that the river is murmuring, that Morpheus is backstage choosing faces for tonight's cast. And if your dreams are strange, blame the ivory gate. And if they're beautiful and true, Horn. Good night from Olympus. Good night from the wine-dark sea. Sleep like Zeus in the pine-scented dark, deeply, royally, and completely outmatched. The whole pantheon is watching over the night shift. You're free to go.